Before I even take you into this story, you need to understand what untreated syphilis does to a human body. It doesn't strike all at once, it waits. It moves quietly, slowly, year after year. First, it damages the nerves, then the heart, then the brain. People start losing their eyesight, then they lose their memory. Their hands and their legs stop responding. Some begin to drift away from reality. And if nothing is done, it eventually shuts the entire body down. Syphilis is a sexually transmitted infection. It's caused by a bacteria. Most people get it through sexual contact, and without treatment, it slowly spreads through the entire body. Now, I want you to hold that picture in your mind because I need you to remember all this pain and suffering, all these effects, when I tell you what happened in this story. In 1932, in rural Macon County, Alabama, 600 black men were invited to take part in what they were told was free healthcare. Out of the 600, 399 already had syphilis and 201 did not. But none of them were told their real diagnosis. All they heard was, "We are treating you for bad blood." That's a general term that people use for any illness that they don't really understand. These men were poor farmers, men who had spent their whole lives without access to proper medical care. So when the government showed up, government doctors arrived offering checkups, meals, transportation, even burial insurance, they immediately agreed. It felt like the first time that anybody cared. The doctors examined them, took their blood, wrote down notes, gave them small tonics and vitamins that looked like real medicine. Sometimes they even performed painful procedures like spinal taps, but these were described as special treatment. The men did not know that these spinal taps were not treatment at all. They were diagnostic tests to monitor the progression of the disease. So let me explain. What the men did not know was that the entire purpose of this study was to observe what syphilis does to a human body when you never treat it. The researchers, they wanted to track the illness from the early stages all the way to the point of death, because they wanted to also do autopsies when these men died. They wanted to study the organs after the men had passed away. So instead of giving treatment, they simply watched these men suffer. Then in the 1940s, something happened that should have ended this study immediately. Penicillin became the standard cure for syphilis. Very simple cure, simple antibiotic, effective, widely available. Lives were being saved everywhere that it was being used. But not here. The men in this study, they were never told about penicillin. They were never offered the cure. They didn't even know what was happening. And to keep the study going, their names were they were even placed on lists that were sent to local doctors around them, instructing them not to treat these men if they came seeking help. Because giving them the cure, helping these men, it would ruin all the data that they had been collecting. So the disease spread. Wives were infected. Children were born with congenital syphilis. By the end, about at least 40 wives and 19 children were directly affected. And the men kept returning for their checkups, still believing that they were being helped. This continued for 40 years. And it did not end because the government decided to stop it. No. It ended because a whistleblower, Peter Buxton, he leaked the truth to the press in 1972. The moment the public learned what had been happening, outrage exploded across the country. Investigations started immediately. A federal panel, they reviewed the case and confirmed what should have been obvious from the beginning. I mean, these men had never given informed consent. They were misled, they were denied treatment, and the study should have never continued, especially after penicillin became available. The study was officially shut down. A class action lawsuit followed. Survivors and families, they were compensated, and the government agreed to provide lifetime medical care to the men who were still alive, as well as their wives, their widows, children who had been affected. In 1997, that's 25 years later, President Bill Clinton, he delivered a formal apology, and he gave it directly to the survivors who were still alive, standing in front of him, carrying the weight of what had been done to them. But the apology, it did not erase the damage. The Tuskegee study, it left a deep scar across generations. For many black families in America, distrust of medical institutions, it didn't come from rumors. It came from history, from stories like this, from the knowledge that doctors once used their authority to harm instead of heal. They had deceived an entire community. And this case, it changed more than just the families involved. It forced the government to create new rules, real protections, to make sure that no study could ever happen again without informed consent, ethical review boards, and oversight. Because what happened in Tuskegee, it wasn't a medical mistake. It was a betrayal, a long, calculated decision to let human beings suffer in silence. And it became one of the biggest warnings in medical history. Without ethics, even science can become dangerous. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like stories like this, please don't forget to follow me on all my social media. I tell these stories all the time.